Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope everybody's having a good day. So, what's the subject for today? Well, we're going to talk about one area of business waivers that we haven't talked about for some time. The normal business waiver, when you hear about it, is when someone's inadmissible for some reason and you have to do a waiver to get them in. But we're going to talk about business waivers in reference to National Interest Waivers, NIW, and how that can lead to the green card, what you need to look for, what you need to do, and what it applies to, okay? And then after, I will go back to all the people that joined and see if I have any questions, immigration questions that is. And if I have immigration questions, then I will answer them. And then we'll call it a day. So just as an aside, let's get into it. The National Interest Waiver falls under what's called EB2, Employment-Based Second Preference. And you don't need a petitioner, and it's basically a self-petition. And if it all works, then you will have the green card by self-petitioning under a national interest waiver, and you will not have had to have spent $1 million on an EB-5. You will not have to stay here forever on an E2 running your own business but not having the green card. It is a very nice way of being able to self-petition and get in. Now, what are some of the misconceptions about NIWs? Well, one is that you have to have a PhD and work in science, okay? And that's not true. That's not true. You have to show, I mean, I'm not saying it's not, I mean, it's difficult to get the NIW, no doubt. But if you properly prepare it and you have a good petition, your chances of getting it will be better. So the NIW can actually be used for entrepreneurs. Okay, if you can show that whatever your education and field is, that it would be in the national interest of the U.S., okay, and that you're going to continue that particular field once you get the green card, then you'll have a decent chance in which to go forward. Now, obviously, you can't just send in, a document and say, my field is in the national interest of the U.S. and therefore you should grant my NIW. It doesn't work like that. Okay, you have to have expert witness letters, testimony. You have to have all kinds of documents, legal arguments. I mean, it does take a while to put together a good NIW. But think about it. If you don't do the NIW, you're going to have to go through the regular perm process. Okay, so the perm is when you go through this whole process to see if there's any available U.S. workers. And then assuming there's, you pass that, then you would do what's called the I-140 petition. And then you would do the adjustment and or consulate processing, whichever you qualify for. And then you have to go work for that company that petitioned you permanently. Okay, and there's a whole video on what permanently means. But if you qualify for the NIW, the National Interest Waiver, then you can start your own company. You can work for any company that does whatever it is that you do. It's wide open, okay? But you're not obligated to work for that company at the time that you get the green card. You're just obligated to work in the field that you have gotten the NIW approved, okay? And just to make clear, there's no perm process for an NIW. You don't have to do perm, okay, where you don't have to show that there's any available U.S. workers for the position. And you don't have to show that you have a sponsor or an employer willing to petition you. That, in many cases, is some of the hardest things to get, because The reality is, if you need to be petitioned and you go to some job interview and they go, wow, you're great. And then you say, well, by the way, can you petition me? They'll go, oh, I'll get back with you. And then you never hear from them again. Okay. 90% of the difficulty of employment petitions is getting an employer to sponsor you. So if you don't have to go through that, then you can do the NIW. Now, a lot of times people don't realize that they have what it takes to do an NIW because, as lawyers, we have to be creative with both the arguments and the evidence and so forth. I'm not saying make misrepresentations and lie. No, but I'm saying be creative and make strong, persuasive arguments as to why you would qualify for the NIW or the EB-2 petition. And as of now, there's very few backlogs around the world, no matter where you come from, on an EB-2. Whereas you get other types of petitions, employment petitions, some are backlogged for a long time before a visa number becomes available. Okay? So that in essence, bottom line, is what the NIW is. So if you're an entrepreneur and or you have any kind of field that you think might benefit the U.S. nationally, economics, business, science, even art in some cases, then you should take advantage and try to do the NIW. Now, a lot of times people say, well, I already got a perm going and it's taking forever. That doesn't mean you can't do an NIW also. You just can't contradict what's in the perm application. It's, like I always say, it's like two horses going around the track. First one to the finish line wins. Okay? All right. Let's go back here and see if we have any questions. By the way, tomorrow morning, guess what's happening? I am getting sworn in to the Michigan State Bar. I didn't have to take the bar in Michigan because I have so many years of experience that they call it reciprocity. So I had to submit a bunch of stuff and go forward and so forth. And once approved, then I can be sworn in. So I've sworn in there, and I did the same thing in Texas. So I am actually licensed now in Texas. I became licensed in 2025 in Texas. In California, I was licensed in 1992. That was a long time ago. And I've been doing immigration since 1996. Hey, come January, that'll be exactly 30 years I've been doing immigration. All right, let's see what questions we have. Okay, I'm going down. So we have a lot of people that joined. Okay. So Robert Painter got the #1 gifter badge, which means, Robert, you're probably going to ask me a question pretty soon, yeah? Let us see. Okay, this is from Just B. Can you travel internationally with a pending I-140 approval? Well, maybe, maybe not. Okay, the I-140 approval by itself does not give you the right to travel. It doesn't give you legal status. It just means that you have gone through the employment process and you have an approved I-140. They don't care about your status. They don't care about your inadmissibility if you are. I mean, theoretically, and I'm not saying you are, but theoretically, you could have 14 crimes and be totally inadmissible and not qualify for any waivers and still get an approved I-140. So I can't tell you if you can travel internationally with a pending I-140 approval without knowing what your actual status is. Okay, let's say you're on H-1B and you're validly on H-1B and it's, you want to go to, China to have a vacation. You can do that. But it's not because you have an approved pending I-140. It's because you have a current H-1B. If you're out of status now, or if you don't qualify for adjustment of status, no how, no way can you travel just because you have a pending I-140 approval. So I need to know if you qualify to adjust, and I need to know what your current status is. Okay? Alrighty. So it says invite official Daniel 111 to join live as a guest. Well, Daniel, do you want a consultation? Let me know, and then I'll invite you. Okay. Just scroll. Okay, this is from Gignagl Blue. That is a difficult name to pronounce. Okay, where should I start? My partner just got deported back to El Salvador. We barely had 6 months. All right, I'm just going to say Gigna for short, okay? I need to know why he got deported. I mean, I can pretty much assume with today's day and age he got deported because he wasn't white. Unfortunately, that's the way things are these days. But was he here unlawfully, and if so, for how long? Okay, I need to know if he's subject to the 3-year bar or the 10-year bar. Did he commit any crimes? If so, I need to know what crimes he committed to determine if there's any waivers available. When you say partner, are you guys going to get married? Because immigration law doesn't recognize partners. Immigration law has no petition that a partner can do. So are you going to get married? If you're going to get married, are you, Gigna, a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident? So there are a whole lot of things that can be done, but I need to know more facts. Okay, primarily, why was he deported, and how long was he here, and on what status was he here, and is he inadmissible based on other factors, like crimes and so forth. Okay. Well, Gigna, you're a U.S. citizen. That's good. So at a minimum, if you're going to marry, which is good, then you would be able to do an immediate relative status, a petition for your partner, once you're married, of course, that was deported. Or theoretically, you could also do a K-1 fiancé visa. But again, let's just assume, let's just pretend that your partner committed some crime, some theft crime, got a sentence for a year. That means he's an aggravated felon, and you cannot petition him. Okay, we might have to do criminal relief to try to reduce or vacate the crime. Okay, but let's say he has no crime, but he was here unlawfully for 2 years. Then he's subject to the 10-year bar. So, we would have to do a waiver of unlawful presence, which can be done, but that takes time. So don't wait 10 years, 20 years. Don't wait. All this stuff that can be done right away, assuming he qualifies. Okay. All right. TILA is a university research nonprofit national interest. Okay. First of all, you have to look more at what is meant by national interest, because you're asking me just is a university or nonprofit national interest. And it's more, the national interest is what it is that you do. So you do have / research. So let's just say that at a university, some guy or woman is doing research for cancer. Let's just say, okay, I'm just throwing it out there. Definitely you can make an argument that that is in the national interest, the researching of cancer and how to stop it, how to slow it down, how to tell, maybe markers of how it might come and do things before it gets bad type thing. And you can see that just because, you're doing research in cancer doesn't necessarily mean it's at a nonprofit, and doesn't necessarily mean it's at a university. It is what you are doing that is important to determine if it's in the national interest. So conversely, if it's just a nonprofit, that by itself doesn't mean it's in the national interest. If it is just a university, that by itself doesn't mean it's in the national interest. And likewise, if it's just research, depending what it is you're researching, that may also not determine whether it's in the national interest. So I need to know more specifically what it is that you do. If this is for you, Tila, I need to know more specifically what you do in order to determine if there's a possibility of a national interest waiver going through. Okay? All right. Oh, and Tila, you've followed this up with an H-1B. Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, you're mixing apples and oranges here. For an H-1B, it doesn't have to be in the national interest. Okay? For an H-1B, if you haven't gotten one, then it normally falls under the cap, and those get used up very, very quickly. So the real issue with the H-1B, based on your question, is whether you can get petitioned by someone who is non or cap exempt. And yes, a nonprofit organization would qualify as cap exempt, which means you can get an H-1B even though you don't fall under the cap. Okay? So that's how that works. Just a second. Let me... let me see what we have here. I was scrolling and then all of a sudden it scrolled way down. So here we are. Okay. This is from Gigna Blue. So I had answered you before regarding some stuff. And apparently your fiance, whatever, she came on asylum January 2022. Well, the question is what happened? I mean, I assume... see, this is what's at issue here. You're saying that there was an order of deportation even though she came on asylum. So I need to know, why did she come on asylum from El Salvador and then get a deportation order? At a minimum, if she came on asylum and lost, she should have got voluntary departure, not deportation, which makes me believe she either didn't go to her hearings and she might have a deportation order in absentia, or there's some issue with asylum that you're not telling me. Okay? So I need to have more than that. You should contact my office for a consultation because there's lots of questions. Okay, Major. Hi. Just wanted to say Jesus loves you and has a plan for you. Your life to Christ. Well, thank you, Major. That's not an immigration question, but thank you. Okay. Yankee, New York City. Good morning. Can I file a U visa outside the USA from my home country? I'm planning to go back. The answer is yes. You don't have to be here to file the U visa. Right off the bat, you know there's a 10-year wait on the U visa. I mean, they issue 10,000 U visas a year, and still it is backlogged for 10 years. I mean, that's a sad statement because that shows all the crimes that are committed in the U.S., that there's so many crimes committed in the U.S. that it's backlogged for a decade, and it's just getting more. Okay? So the question is whether, I mean, the answer is yes, you can, but do you qualify? Okay? And did you do everything necessary to get a better chance of success? And whenever anyone files for a U, I have to see if they also might qualify for a T, because there's no backlog on Ts. And, you know, if you're a victim of work trafficking or sex trafficking, you know, you can file a T. Okay? Alrighty. This is from Halia Pretty. Hi, is it okay to fly domestic? I see others fly with no issue. Okay, well, I'm assuming you're asking me that because you might not have legal status here. And I can tell you right now, just because you see someone else do something and they don't have an issue does not mean that that's going to apply to you. That's like when I'm giving a consultation and all of a sudden they disagree. Well, they'll say, well, I know someone who had exactly the same case and they won, they got out. And then I'll ask a single question of which they'll say, no, that's not the case. I'll go, well, you know, so it's never exactly the same. And just because you see other people do it, you don't know what their immigration status is. You don't know what their issues are. They might fly to places that don't have any issues. Okay, I mean, who knows? If you fly into Arizona or Texas or Florida, there might be some ICE agents at the other end. Okay? So it really depends on what your situation is, what your status is, and neither I nor any immigration lawyer can guarantee you that if you fly domestically, there will not be any problems. Okay? In fact, it's the exact opposite. Okay? You got to be careful, especially in today's day and age with everything that's going on. You're welcome, Yankee. Okay, Aflatun. Hi, sir. I'm a U.S. citizen through asylum. Well, congratulations. Although technically, you got your green card through asylum and then you became a U.S. citizen. Can I go back to my home country? The answer is yes. There's no legal bar on it. But if, let's say, you just got, just one asylum and then you decide to go on TV and tell how great it is, that's one thing. You obviously don't want it to come across that you misrepresented or lied as to why you got asylum. So when you're there in your home country, which you're legally able to, stay under the radar. Don't go out and start protesting. Okay. Alrighty. What else do we have? Okay. Diego Armando. I'm waiting for the visa for my wife, and it's more than a year. Well, first of all, does she qualify? Is she in the U.S.? Is she outside the U.S.? Are there any grounds of inadmissibility? Do you have any crimes from your past? Have you received any notification in regards to the fact that it's being processed? Is this an immediate relative petition? Okay, so there's issues I need to know. Okay, let's see. Aliyah Pretty says, thank you, you're welcome. Okay. Oh, and you got the #1 gifter badge. Okay, this is from, well, everybody has big names today. Alma Hernandez Degom. If your certification for U visa expired, can we ask for an extension? No, you cannot. Once you get the certification, it's good for 6 months. 6 months and 1 day, you can throw that certification in the garbage. There's no extension. You need to go back and get another certification. The real question I have is, why'd you wait 6 months? Maybe you didn't know that it expired, but you have to get another certification. Period. Okay. Can I use a psychological evaluation? This is for Nelson. Oh, you're welcome, Aflatun. Nelson, can I get a psychological evaluation for VAWA? Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, not only can you use it, it says can I use? Not only can you use it, you should use it. I mean, if you're applying for VAWA, which is Violence Against Women Act, even though sometimes it applies to men, I've done both, and you're using emotional abuse, you absolutely, positively should use a psychological evaluation to show the emotional abuse. It's one thing you saying all the abuse you've had and doing the declaration. It's another thing having a professional tell why the abuse was severe and how it occurred and putting a professional opinion there. Okay, as a matter of fact, when I do VAWA applications, regardless if it's emotional or physical, I always include a psychological examination. Always. Okay. Alma Hernandez says, thank you. You're welcome. Okay. Aliyah Pretty, do you think what's going on with immigration is ever going to stop? Are there going to be a change? Well, yes. I absolutely do. But, I mean, first of all, our current president has to be out of power for sure. But I'm thinking that all the Republicans who sit there and do nothing and let all this happen, eventually, some of them will see that our democracy is being taken away, that everything that's happening is driving the country in the wrong direction, and that all the power that they craved and that they want to hold on to will mean nothing if our current president becomes a dictator. Okay? So I also know that there's a lot of people and Democrats that are fighting to maintain and keep democracy. And there's a lot of immigration attorneys that are fighting up and down and suing up and down when, basically ICE acts like the Gestapo. I saw the other day, it was really strange. I saw the other day, I think it was on TikTok, there was some sentences that someone wrote, and it was talking about how they're coming in to the houses, they're taking people out, they're just looking at the color of their skin type thing. And I thought that was sad, right? Because it's happening. And then they showed that what I saw was a passage from the book Anne Frank wrote back in World War II with the Nazis. Can you believe it? And I seriously thought that it was talking about today. So I'm answering your question in a long roundabout way, but absolutely it will stop. Okay? All these ICE agents that are tackling people to the ground, that are taking US citizens, that are restraining people who have brown skin or black skin merely because of that and not because of their status. All those people, assuming there's proof of it later on, there will be charges against them. Okay, the day will come. They're violating the Constitution up and down. The day will come. So I know that right now, it's not a nice time. It's not a pleasant time. But that's the time that we have to fight to keep democracy going. Okay? Which there are. There are a lot of people that are really fighting, which is great. And the No King's Day parade come, 2 days from now, is going to be the largest ever in U.S. history, regardless of what Trump tries to do with his Camp Pendleton military parade and closing the 5 freeway. It's just another gimmick on his part. Okay? So there we go. Let's see. Well, Nelson, who do you think is going to win the next midterms? Well, that's why, like in California, they have, Prop 50, which basically is a voter-instituted way to get more representatives to balance the illegal way that Texas, just gerrymandered the heck out of theirs. And, Indiana's going to do it, North Carolina. So, unfortunately, at this point, more Democratic states have to do similar things, which I know is on the table. But as long as the Democrats can do the various things to try to keep the balance, the filled level, no doubt, no how, the Democrats are going to win the House back. There's no way that they're not going to do it. I mean, even the Republicans, even the people, the MAGA people who voted for Trump are hurting. Okay? You get a lot of them saying they didn't vote for this. Well, they did vote for this and they did know, but now it's affecting them personally. And now they don't want any more of it. Okay? So the only way that Trump's going to win, the House is going to win the midterms is by cheating. And they do it openly now. They flat out do it openly. So as long as democracy prevails and as long as we keep fighting to keep democracy, I am very confident that midterms will come and the House will go to Democratic control. Okay? That's what I think. Okay. You mark my word, that'll happen. Tony, you're a pessimist. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for today. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And until the next live, if you want to get a consult, just contact my office any of the multiple ways that I allow. All right. Have a good day.